It feels crazy for us Irish fans and pundits and everybody involved in the media. It feels crazy that we're only 9 months out from a World Cup, less than out from a World Cup, and head coaches are getting sacked from teams that have been very successful at previous World Cups. And you look at Wales getting the semi-finals, and even back in 2011, the way they put it up to France in the semi-final, and they went for a bit of a change. Warren Gatland obviously stepped away from the success that he had in the Championship, Six Nations, Grand Slams. Wayne Pivac came in, and it hasn't worked out, and it feels really bizarre that the Autumn Nation Series went the way it did for Wales, considering they put out a half decent team against Georgia in their last game, and they still managed to throw, or sorry, their penultimate game, and then managed to throw away the lead that they had against Australia. So he's faced the chop. He's gone, and obviously Eddie Jones is the other guy that's gone, who took England to a Rugby World Cup final in Japan in 2019. And for us Irish, it feels very peculiar, weird, talking about coaches being sacked at this time of the year with the big rugby competition in front of us. But we're in a pretty good position. Number one in the world, settled team, settled coaching staff. Everybody seems to be singing off the same hymn sheet, and I'm sure if you're a Wales fan or an English fan, you'd be banging your head off a pretty solid wall, because it's been such a frustrating couple of years for them in particular. And the feeling, Donny, across British and Irish eyes is that most people are happy to see the changes. Of course, you're going to get the small minority that think that they deserve more time, and it's crazy leading into a Rugby World Cup year. But you see it in football all the time. You see when the teams, hovering down the bottom, they make a decision quickly so that they don't get into even more trouble. And I'd say if you went back and looked at the stats, more times than enough, they do seem to climb the table when the change is made, and you do seem to get an injection of enthusiasm, and players really putting it in, and different ideas coming to the table. And yeah, I was a lot more surprised with the English call than I was with the Welsh call, because working in the URC every week and seeing how the Welsh regions have performed, their players haven't been playing well. So leading into the Autumn Nation Series, it was no surprise to me that they wouldn't perform to the best of their ability. But maybe Warren Gatland, you can get that out of him. He's back again. He's a master. I worked with him under the British and Irish Lions in 2009. Just loves to cast an eye over everything. Unfortunately for him, he's not going to have his familiar Sean Edwards, defence coach, alongside him to lead the troops. But yeah, it's all change. And even New Zealand rugby, the amount of people that there's been a chop and change in there. I think that the rugby landscape has certainly intensified and become much more cutthroat when we're leading towards a Rugby World Cup, which means so much to every nation. Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend of Heineken Champions Cup rugby. It's the first year the South African team's involved. The URC have got the South African teams firing. They're playing some really good rugby. They picked up where they left off this season from last, and they're going to be a match for any team in the competition. So I'm really intrigued to see how obviously the new format is going to work out. Each team has two teams, Ulster of Seal, La Rochelle, that they got to play home and away. Leinster obviously have Racing up first, and Munster are at home to Toulouse. That a repeat of the Aviva Stadium penalty kicks from last year, so that should be a cracking game on Sunday. The Ulster game for me, it's a tricky one, because Ulster were flying after 37 minutes against Leinster, and then let's call it how it is. They capitulated. They were humiliated in the end as well. Which I've been there. I'm not just saying this lightly. I've been in those lads' shoes. I was there in a Heineken Cup final where we got our backsides handed to us time and time again, and it was embarrassing to send your supporters home with such a big defeat. And obviously the scoreline isn't the same as it was, but it almost feels very similar on how they hung in for large parts of the game. Obviously they had a big lead, but they just folded when the pressure come on, and being in that situation, sometimes you don't have an answer. Like, you don't have, why did it go like that? Is it game management? Is it certain players? Is it all the HIAs, all the red, the red card and the 2 yellow cards? Did they get ahead of themselves? Like, it's really difficult to put your finger on how Leinster clawed their way back into the game, because it was in Ulster's hands to get the result. And be really interesting to see how that affects him going away to Seal this weekend. John Cooney got absolutely sparked out last weekend against Leinster. He's probably not going to play. James Hume went off with an HIA. Tom Stewart went off with an HIA. Ian Henderson, the club captain, went off with an HIA. And all those players didn't return. Most of the times, if it's an HIA, and a few of them were quite innocuous, that they would come back onto the field. That didn't happen. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see, firstly, what the team sheet is for Ulster, and secondly, if they can pick themselves up, dust themselves down, and get back to winning ways against the Seal team that are going to prove to be very resilient at home. I'm sure.